A formal practicing of law seems to have been established by King Athelbert of Kent around the turn of the 7th century. He converted to Christianity from paganism with the help of the missionary Augustine and his wife Bertha, a Christian Frankish princess, and he became compelled to have his list of 90 laws drawn up. They were designed to bring about social order and prevent bloodshed, with a standardized system of compensation and fines. The first 8 clauses established the financial penalties for crimes such as stealing from the church or disturbing the peace of the church. Clauses 9 to 16 established the repercussions of committing crimes against the king, his officials, and his property. The remaining clauses, 17 to 90, established the weregild, which means the price of man, where compensation is measured by the victim's social status and the type of injury they've sustained. King Alfred the Great, during the latter years of his life, comprised the Doom Book, a book of judgment, where he begins with Mosaic and apostolic law and continues with his own decrees. Alfred notes in the beginning of his code that he does not dare to include too many of his own personal judgments, as they may not be agreed upon by future generations. He states that his Doom Book is designed to perfect the law codes of previous rulers such as King Athelbert of Kent, King Ina of Wessex, and King Offa of Mercia, to bring about mercy, fairness, and social order. Kings would often be surrounded by a witan, which means a council of wise men who would advise them on topics such as new laws and distribution of lands and properties. The witan would often be comprised of clergymen such as archbishops, bishops, and abbots, as well as nobles such as ealdormen. Despite all of this formality such as law codes and witans, the Anglo-Saxons did have some strange practices when it came to bringing about justice. To start off, crimes that didn't warrant execution were still met with some harsh punishments, such as scalping, branding, having your nose slit, or even having your eyes pulled out. There was also the punishment of flogging. However, during the reign of Athelred the Unready, it is said that his mother, Alfrith, beat him so severely as a child that he couldn't bear the sight of a whip, so during his reign, public punishments were far less severe, and he very rarely passed the death penalty. Another interesting form of punishment was the practice of corsned. Suspected criminals would be forced to swallow consecrated barley cake with the belief that a lying mouth would choke on it. A famous case similar to this was the father of Harold Godwinson, who was Godwin as he was accused of murder. Under the rule of Edward the Confessor in 1053, he was ordered to swallow an ounce of consecrated bread, on which he choked on and died. The Saxons introduced laws about adultery, as well as punishments. The punishment was, in fact, death. If a woman had committed adultery, her bit on the side was hanged, she was burnt at the stake, and her ashes were scattered beneath her swinging lover. So you may be wondering what to do if you commit a crime in Anglo-Saxon England, as it may one day come in handy. Thanks to King Athelbert of Kent, he set in motion the idea of sanctuary, whereby a criminal could hide away in a church and become untouchable to the law. As this law evolved throughout the remainder of the first millennia, however, a 40-day rule was put in place where the criminal would have to leave the church within that time. But they were granted safe passage to a port where they could leave the country, and it would be a criminal offence to try and get in their way of doing so. If no boats were available to take them away, they would have to walk into the sea until it was deep enough that the water was up to their knees every single day, as a sign that they were serious about leaving the country. To end on something slightly more positive, Alfred the Great introduced a system where a victim of a crime could receive some compensation for the troubles. For example, you'd get 6 shillings for a mutilated ear, 9 shillings for a stab to the nose, 20 shillings for a lost thumb, and 50 shillings for a lost eye. Although, if you were fortunate enough to be a nobleman, but evil enough to commit a murder, you could pay your way out of trouble. Killing a nobleman would cost you 250 gold pieces or 150 cows. Killing a freeman would cost you 200 gold pieces or 100 cows, whereas killing you, a serf, would cost him only 1 cow. Thanks for watching.